Who has held the oceans in his hands? Who has numbered every grain of sand? Kings and nations tremble at his voice. All creation rises to rejoice. Who has given counsel to the Lord? Who can question any of his words? Who can teach the one who knows all things? Who can fathom all his wondrous deeds? Behold, our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold, our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. Who has felt the nails upon his hand, bearing all the guilt of sinful man? God eternal, humble to the grave. Jesus, Savior, risen now to reign. Behold, our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold, our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. You will reign forever. You will reign forever. You will reign forever. You will reign forever. Behold, our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold, our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. Behold, our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold, our King, nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him. When I was a freshman at Freed, or coming into my freshman year, I was 700 miles away from home, and I was one of those poor, pitiful freshmen who did not have his own car. Me nor my roommate, neither one of us. We were both from far away, and neither of us had a car, and so that was kind of a sad thing. And so that whole first year, and then in that first summer after college, I saved up my money. I remember that first summer after my freshman year, early on, we went to this used car lot, and we bought this beautiful little $1,500 Eagle Red Summit. Now, I hesitate to show you pictures of myself from then because it's just embarrassing, but here we go anyway. Shut up, right? It's your problem. I'm moving on from it already. That's the beautiful car. You can tell in both those pictures I'm thrilled that my mom is making me take this picture. But when I got, again, I'm done with that. We're moving on. When I got that car, even though it was an utter piece of junk, it barely survived the 4 years that I was in school, and a year or so after that, it left me stranded multiple times. But in the moment, boy, I thought I was something else. I had my own little shiny red car. And it's funny, when you have something new and shiny, it keeps your attention, it gets your focus. And it doesn't take very long, though, for you to realize that it's not as great as you thought it was. And it doesn't take very long when you have a shiny new thing to ding that shiny new thing. Kind of sounds like Dr. Seuss, doesn't it? Because it was just a couple weeks after I got this thing, I was sitting at an intersection back home in West Virginia, and everything's on a hill there. This intersection was on a hill. And back then I had these boots that I wore. I think I was at work that day, and so I had khakis on. And these were really great hiking boots. I would view them as that now. Then we just wore those everywhere, right? It was cool to wear your hiking boots. So I had these big boots, middle of summer. And they were so big and heavy and the car was also so weak that I couldn't hardly feel the gas or the brakes. And so I'm sitting at this intersection, and I remember pushing down, and the car lurching forward. I accidentally hit the gas instead of the brakes on this hill, and I rammed into this car in front of me. Now, fortunately, the guy was in a hurry. Neither of us were damaged real well, and he just said, forget it, let's go. But all of a sudden, this brand new shiny thing was dinged. And it's funny how my focus was put back into focus. I think in life sometimes we're the same way. We experience new things and exciting things, shiny new things, and it grabs our focus. And sometimes when those things grab our focus and when those events and moments that are exciting and shiny grab our focus, it can kind of mess us up because it can very quickly become about me. So what do you do when you're experiencing those new moments that are exciting and the future is exciting? How do you deal with that? I think for some of you who are freshmen, I've heard more freshmen may show up at the second service than at this one, but some of you are freshmen, this is a new and exciting time, right? I mean, you're away from home for the first time. You've got freedom like never before. The future is exciting, man. And then there's some of you, you're returning students, and you're taking steps forward in your journey, and now, wow, it's exciting to think about what's next, and you're starting to plan for the future and think about what's next, and boy, it's exciting, just a little bit scary. And here's what happens. Here's the temptation in these sorts of moments. The temptation is to focus on how I got myself here and how I'll get myself there, wherever there is, right? The temptation is to think, well, look how hard I worked to get here. And you did likely work hard and jumped through some hoops and you helped to get yourself here. But the temptation is to think, I'm the one who did this by myself. And you may not explicitly say that. You probably never would. But internally, that's kind of how we're processing and thinking about it. Look how I got myself here. And for those of you who are thinking about the future already, the temptation is to think, okay, I want to get here. How am I going to get myself there? And we, unaware sometimes, kind of throw God out of the equation. I think the temptation is similar for this church. If you're a guest with us or a student, you're probably not aware that today's a pretty significant day for us. Because here in just a few minutes, we're going to appoint new elders and new deacons. In the history of this church, this is a big moment, and it's a big step towards the future. And I think the temptation is, as we reflect on this, to begin to think and to focus on how we got ourselves here and how we'll get ourselves there. And here's what I mean by that. We've arrived at this moment in time, and it's happened because of great leadership and vision. And you may not realize this week is our third anniversary in this building. We've been here for 3 years exactly. So that's exciting. So there's all this stuff to look back on and think, wow. And we'd never say that God didn't have anything to do with it. Of course not. But the temptation is to begin to think, look what we did. Look how we've arrived. We've got this bright, shiny new thing. And I'm not talking about the new elders' foreheads when I talk about the bright, shiny new thing. Actually, we're going to be 4 out of 5 of the elders on the bright, shiny thing. But what I'm saying is we've got this new, exciting moment, and it's easy to think, look what we've done. And with this exciting future ahead of us, the temptation is the same, to begin to think, man, look what the future holds. Look where we could be and look where we could arrive and get to. Man, this is exciting. How are we going to get ourselves there? And without really thinking about it, and unintentionally, we kind of push God to the side, and it becomes all about us. So what do you do when now is new and the future is exciting, and you're facing this temptation? And all of us face this temptation in different ways. We arrive at this point in time and we think, wow, look how I got here. And you think about the future and you think, well, how am I going to get there? And to help us wrestle with that tension that all of us face at different phases of life, but I think today's a day when students are facing that, and I think as a church we're facing that. How do we deal with that? And to deal with that, I want to turn to a passage that's super familiar. Almost so familiar, it's trite and too obvious to the point that I said we don't need to use this passage, but it just fits. So Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. If you're a guest with us, you know that we're walking through the book of Acts this year and next year, and we're going to take a couple-week break just because there's a lot of transition going on with new leadership, students are back, so we're taking a couple weeks off from the book of Acts. But I want you to turn to Proverbs chapter 3. And again, well known, most of you could quote it if I got you started on it. Even if you couldn't quote it, you could probably say a lot of it. And here's, again, think about this temptation we face to focus on ourselves and what we've done and how we're going to get where we're going. And here's what it says: trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now again, these are one of those kind of trite statements. It's like, okay, of course I'm supposed to trust God. But I think in the moments when things are going well and it's exciting and everything's new, we need the reminder. Now, it's not hard to remember this when things are bad, is it? When you're at the bottom, when things are hurting, when you're low and you need help, yeah, immediately it's like, man, I got to trust God, I got to trust God, I got to trust God. But when things are kind of high and exciting and new and the future is bright, we unintentionally lose our focus on trust in God. And this is an important reminder in a moment like this, in a day like today, in a beginning of a semester like this. I've got to keep my focus on the Lord. I've got to trust and depend on Him. The next line, though, is what's hard for me. Do not lean on your own understanding. That's especially hard for me when things are going wrong. Because when things are going wrong in life, I want to figure out why they're going wrong, and I want to analyze it, and then I want to do what I can to fix it. And so I have trouble trusting in God and acknowledging Him in all His ways because I'm trying to figure things out on my own. But I think the same is true when things are good and things are exciting. The temptation is to analyze how we've done it. And to try to figure things out and think, okay, we got here. How did we get here? And then we look to the future and it's like, okay, what can I do to get from here to there? And we try to figure out and understand it from our perspective. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a second. Planning and preparation is so important and it's biblical. But while we plan and prepare and try to figure out the future, wow, we must not push God to the side, even if we don't intend to. We've got to quit trying to figure it out on our own and understand that it's by Him that we've arrived here and it's by Him that we'll get anywhere. He says, in all your ways, acknowledge Him. And again, I think we struggle with this because it's easy to focus on what we've done. And here in a little bit, as we acknowledge new elders and deacons, man, it's going to be rightly so a time to acknowledge leadership. But in the middle of all this, it's exciting and new. We can't stop. We can't forget to acknowledge the one who got us here. And then this last line, and He will make straight your paths. As I go back to the previous line, in all your ways acknowledge Him, I think that's about the past. It's saying, okay, I've arrived to this point, and I have not arrived here on my own. I've arrived to this point because God's brought me here. And then I've got to acknowledge that as I face the future, the only way I'm going to arrive anywhere good is because God will take me there. I like the way the Christian Standard Bible translates this. It says, He will guide you on the right paths. Sure, you need to plan and prepare and have some vision and think about the future as a church, as an individual, as a college student. But ultimately, if we're not leaving that in the hands of God, we're failing. Right on the spot, we're failing. And so again, I come back to this temptation. This temptation in a big, exciting new moment to focus on how I got myself here and how I'll get myself there. How do we avoid that? And I just want to give you this simple principle. And it's this. If you want to overcome the temptation, this temptation that all of us deal with at times, is to remember what Proverbs 3 teaches us, and that's this. He got us here, and He'll get us there. Instead of saying, look how I got myself here and how I'll get myself there, no, I need to reorient my thoughts and say, He got me to this moment in this point in time, and any moment or point in time in the future, He will get me there. Here's the way other biblical writers described it in Proverbs 16, verse 3. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. Or Proverbs 19, verse 21, many are the plans in the mind of a man. If you're planning for the future, you've got all this stuff rolling around, but you've got to remember as you make those plans that ultimately only the Lord's purpose will stand. Some of you who have a little of experience know this, right? You had some plans for your future. You had an idea of what you would do with your life and where you would be. And it's almost laughable to think about where you're at now, isn't it? 10 years ago, had you said, Matt, in 10 years, you're going to be preaching at Stantonville, teaching at Freed-Hardeman, and I would have laughed at you and said, no, that's not even on my radar. Not even it's laughable to think about what my plans were 10 years ago. Because those plans, in reality, aren't my plans. Those are the Lord's plans, and His purpose will stand. But don't mishear me. Some of you who are about planning and preparation and vision are kind of like, I don't know if I like this. Listen, planning and preparation and hard work are important. Proverbs 6:6-8. Go to the ant, sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. In other words, she prepares for the future. That's important. But while you prepare and plan for your future, you must not, even if it's unintentional, put God to the side and keep your focus on what you can do. Anywhere you arrive in life will be because of what the Lord has done for you. Because the Lord will help you get there. Which is why I like James 4. Maybe here's the reminder. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town, spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet, now, is it okay to plan for the future? Is it okay to say, here are my plans for the future? Absolutely. Only if you say, not literally say, but only if your thought process is, ultimately it's God's will. He continues, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Now, that does not mean that every time you say something about the future, you have to say, Lord willing. Nobody's saying that, right? But what we are saying is, spiritually, emotionally, you've got to know, okay, I'm making plans, but ultimately, this is in God's hands. Because He got me here, and anywhere in the future, He will get me there. So let me say this to the church. This is an exciting time. Our future is exciting. And we need to be reminded today that anywhere we've arrived is not because of what we've done, because of what God has done. If I were to go back in time 13 years, 13 and a half years ago to December 2008, it was the last few weeks of our time here at Stantonville. I worked here straight out of college for about 4.5 years, and then we moved to Peru. And as I were to look back on that December 2008, right before we went to Peru, and had I imagined where this church would be in 13 and a half years, I couldn't have imagined a building like this. I couldn't have, in my wildest dreams, imagined the leadership that we're about to appoint. That particular group of people that will be the elders of this church, I couldn't have dreamed that up. It's beyond what I could have imagined. You see, if it's up to me, my dreams and imagination are so short-sighted compared to what God can do. And so I've got to remember, anywhere we've arrived is because of what God has done. And anywhere we go in the future as a church, while we ought to plan and have vision, and we're here because of some of that planning and vision, we can't forget that it's God who will get us there, not us. As students, whether you're a first-time freshman or you've been around for a couple years and you're looking towards the future, the reminder is the same. And maybe you could think about it this way. I want you to imagine that life is this map and your current location right where you're at. Wherever you're at right now, you may have worked hard for, and there may have been some sacrifices to get here, to get to this point. But you are here standing on the backs of other people, and most importantly, you're here because of the Lord has brought you here to this point. All of us need that reorientation to remind myself it's not about me and what I've done. And as you think about the future, wherever that is, I think first of all, you need to admit up front that wherever you imagine the future to be, it's probably something different. All right, most of us have experienced that. Wherever you're imagining that to be, it's likely something different. And wherever that is, He'll get you there. He'll get you. You got to work hard. You got to plan, but ultimately it's in the Lord's hands because He got us here and He'll get us there. Now, how do you keep this in mind? How do you remember this? This is it's kind of a vague, kind of general concept. What can you do to keep this at the forefront? Because I need reminded of this. And let me give you 3 things real quick. Number 1, you've got to intentionally acknowledge God's activity. That's Proverbs 3. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, the 3rd line of those 2 verses. And that takes intention. Right now, this sounds kind of vague and general, right? Just acknowledge God's activity. But you've got to be intentional about that. So I don't know what intentional looks like for you. Maybe it's putting it on a sticky note that says, God, you got me here. And anywhere I go in the future, you'll get me there. Maybe it's a sticky note, maybe it's on the back of your phone, somewhere where you can see it. I think what we did yesterday as a church, when we spent a day, many of you spent the day fasting and praying, that was a moment in time that we said, okay, we're at a significant point. This is a very real and physical way of acknowledging that God got us here. And that anywhere we go in the future, it's going to be God who gets us there. And that was an intentional way to keep that at the forefront. For those of you who are students, I think the most obvious way that's so unobvious sometimes is that you get to spend 30 minutes every weekday acknowledging God. And I know chapel can get old. It's like, every day, and thankfully we have 12 skips or whatever. And I can skip anytime I want to. It's like we get a little tired of it. But do you realize that you get to sing with 12, 13, 14, 1,500 people 5 days a week? Some people will never do that in their lives. Most Christians will never sing with that many people in their lives. And you get to acknowledge God's activity through worship that many days a week. That's incredible. And I know it gets old and tiring, but that's an incredible everyday opportunity for you to say, you know what, it's not about me. I'm here because of what God has done. And it's a chance to intentionally acknowledge Him. Here's the second thing you got to do to keep this in mind, and this one's general too. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Now again, I've hesitated with this one because this sounds like one of those general things preachers will say, just keep your eyes on the Lord. How do you do that? Let me tell you why I'm including this one. Here's what Hebrews says, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. So the Hebrews writer says, when you're facing temptation, you've got to keep your eyes on Jesus. You've got to keep your focus on Him. So let's think about it this way. Imagine that back wall is like keeping your focus on Jesus. All right, so I'm going through life, keeping my focus right there. Here's the temptation. When bad things happen, imagine that wall is the bad thing. No offense to people over here. But over here's the bad thing. It's easy to allow those problems to pull my focus. And I find myself looking that direction, right? And it's hard to take my focus back to Jesus. Let's imagine that this wall is the good things that happen, and the new shiny things. And when those things happen, the same thing happens. Instead of keeping my eyes on Jesus, my eyes are drawn over here. And the big problem with over here is sometimes there's a big fat mirror right there. And Satan uses that mirror for me to look at that big shiny new thing, that exciting future, and it reflects back at me, and I begin to think, wow, look what I've done, and look what I can do. The only antidote to that is to keep my eyes on Jesus. He's the one who got me here, and He's the one who will get me anywhere else. And then here's the last thing. Lean into the help of the Spirit. Ephesians 3, verse 16, that according to the riches of His glory, He may grant you to be strengthened with power through His Spirit in your inner being. To the leaders who will be appointed today, elders and deacons, the Holy Spirit lives inside of you to strengthen you to carry out this new and exciting responsibility. Lean into that. To brand new students, freshmen, if you've been baptized into Christ, the Holy Spirit lives in you and strengthens you in your inner being to face this new and exciting time in your life. Lean into that. And to everyone, and to all the returning students, whatever you're facing right now, know that the Lord, that the Holy Spirit lives inside of you to strengthen you in your inner being, to help you with whatever you're going to face. Lean into that. Lean into that. Why? Because He got us here, and He'll get us there. Over the past couple of years, we've taken a couple of cool road trips, and so I got into this app. It's called Road Trippers. You can see it real small at the upper the top of it, Road Trippers. It's this cool app, and basically, you may not realize this, but you can't just build a road trip in the average map app. You got to pay a little bit for a good one to build a cool road trip, and you can put in these points, and it'll take you on this entire road trip, and I love it. And what's cool about it is you get somewhere, and you can pull out the app, and I would do that, and I'd say, okay, here's where we've come, here's where we're at, and here's where we're going. And I like this app. It tells you where you've been and where you're going. On the road trip of life, I don't know where you find yourself on the map, where your current location is. It may be a really exciting time, like kind of this point in time for this church, or for many of you who are students, it's an exciting time, or you may be in a difficult time. Wherever you're at on the map, I want you to know this. He got you here. And if it's a difficult time, if he got you here, he's going to carry you through it. And as you think about that map and where you want to be next, and where the rest of your road trip may lead, here's what I want you to know. Wherever that is, he'll get you there. So wherever you find yourself on the map and you think about the past and you think about the future, as exciting as it may be, I think these are the moments that we've got to stop and remind ourselves that he got us here. And wherever we end up, he'll get us there. If we can help you in any way at all, won't you come as we stand and sing together? Stay out here,